This is Rebel Mama Pod, where we talk about what's not in the brochure about ADHD, midlife, burnout, and more. This is your host, Sarah Castañeda. I've been interviewing experts and patients on this topic for more than 7 years. Today we have with us Dani Donovan. Dani is an award-winning ADHD creator whose viral comics and TikTok videos helped build an online community of validation and solidarity for neurodivergent adults. Welcome to the show, Dani.
Hello, thanks so much for having me.
It's so great to have you here. Before we jump in, do you want to tell the listeners a little bit about your background? I'm sure they've seen your cartoons all over, your comics. Cartoon's not the right word.
Oh, no, there's cartoons
right
in them. Yeah, some of them are. So it's really funny because I've got the most like ADHD collection of random ways in which I've expressed my lived experience through ADHD at this point. I make it about 2 years, and then I'm like, I'm bored. What's the new, kind of what's the new thing?
For sure.
And so I was a graphic designer for a really long time. I was a graphic designer at Gallup, and I went to art therapy like a couple times and really enjoyed it. Ended up making a how I tell stories, like a flowchart of like my complete like disaster of a train of thought, and ended up seeing this huge response to it right away. And so then after that went viral, like immediately I started making kind of more comics. So I've got ADHD comics and infographics.
Mhm.
Then I switched over and I started procrastinating making those comics by making ADHD TikToks. And then those started getting big, and I started making, like ADHD like jokes on, and tweets and like short form content. And so being able to sort of do the digestible insights, I always kind of say like a spoonful of meme humor helps the painful insights go down. And so kind of getting into that like meme therapy, I guess, and then switching over into creating my activity book for procrastinators, the Anti-Planner.
Wonderful. So let's talk about this a bit. You talk about the toolbox approach, having 100 systems instead of searching for the one perfect method, which I love, by the way. It's so spot on. How do you actually put that into practice when your brain wants to optimize all the things?
Oh my gosh. That is the story of my life. And I think that it comes down to making the decision that like I have like an operating system, and I just, as much as I can try and finagle it and change things, there are certain tendencies that I have that are just going to be there. And one of those tendencies is to quit things, is to be inconsistent. And so if my measurement of me doing a good job is going to be if I stay consistent at something forever, I'm going to always be disappointed in myself. I'm going to always feel bad. And so sort of changing that mindset over to be like, how can I set myself up for success by making sure that I'm picking a goal or picking a system that is naturally in line with how I'm acting anyway. And so for me, and the Anti-Planner ended up being like, it's this collection of over 100 different like strategies, activities, and games on how to get stuff done when you don't feel like it. But I have really discovered that the toolbox approach, people say like, oh, build a toolbox. And we don't really get into the weeds about what that kind of means. And all I was going to say was that the mindset shift from figuring out what is the resistance that I'm facing, why am I procrastinating, why am I putting things off? If I can get to that why, then I can figure out what tool I need, because the type of resistance you'll get from a screw is different than something that you'll get from a nail. You could get a screw into the wall with a hammer, but you're not going to have a good time. But if you are able to then find what the resistance is and a tool that is specifically tailored to fix that problem, you're going to have a higher chance of success. And so I think that like scoping it into how do I set myself up for success by both leaning into my existing tendencies and understanding that the approach that I take being tailored to the problem I'm having makes a huge difference.
Totally. I love that so much. And you just talked about that, how you're using one type of medium to procrastinate with, and you're working on this while and I just love that. The second question, a lot of ADHD productivity advice still carries shame, just try harder, you're lazy, etc. How did you design the Anti-Planner to validate instead of criticize?
So the reason why I self-published the book was truly like started from this place of being afraid that a publishing house was going to like water it down, or someone without ADHD was going to make me take stuff out. And I like really, really did not want to have that because it was so important to me that like this message gets across crystal clear. And so much of it is I know this is a book about productivity. This is a book about having, how to get more stuff done. But the point is because you want to and because you're excited to get stuff done, not because you're like afraid you have to get stuff done. So many of us with ADHD have built our entire like coping strategy, manual up to this point based on shame motivation. People being mad at me is a very big motivator for me to get my shit together. Worrying about disappointing others, disappointing myself, but they're really or like last minute panic. So we're tapping into that like amygdala based emotions motivation. And so being able to say, all right, if that's what we're already doing, how can we understand it a bit more so that we can maybe take some of the reasons why they work. So like I've got a section in the book on like lacking accountability, how difficult it is to get stuff done when you don't have external deadlines
Right.
or people won't know or care if you do it or not. Like no one's gonna like give you crap for not going to the gym, and
Right.
how do we put stuff in place though that can kind of like emulate those in like a fun approach instead of something that's going to consistently cause shame? Because you're absolutely right that like so many of us receive just so many messages about not trying hard enough, being lazy, and that steeps kind of into our self-esteem. So that back part of the book, the discouraged section, is hopeless and like insecure. And there's a lot of stuff that has to do with rewriting these storylines that we've gotten from all this baggage about like quote unquote failed attempts at productivity in the past.
Yeah, for sure. And what does emotional aware design mean to you? How do you build for how ADHD brains actually work rather than how we're told they should work?
I actually stumbled into the navigation for this. I call it a book. It's like part activity book, but part like it was a guide. You don't have to read the whole thing. You don't have to like write in it. Like it's a very interesting kind of system. But the main
Mhm.
thing that I wanted to get across was like, how do I help people navigate this? How do I help them identify what the tool is that they need? And so, like I talked about earlier, the resistance, identifying how we're feeling is so difficult. Like I've been in therapy for a decade and it's still not easy for me. And so what I kind of did is figuring out, all right, if people need to find the tool based on the resistance, that we need to, have the resistance is easy to identify. And there I found
Mhm.
like 16 different sub emotions after I was brainstorming, like what are all the different reasons I don't want to get stuff done? And I kind of found them in these categories and then realized, all right, well, 16 is too many to pick between still. Like, I don't want to have someone go, okay, I want to get something done. And then go, well, now I have paralysis over not knowing what I'm just going to throw my hands up. I'm overwhelmed. I'm done. Like, because I've been there. That's me.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I'm
Too.
like, I understand you. So if it would overwhelm me, it's going to overwhelm someone else and I got to, back it up. And so I ended up finding these sort of like umbrella emotions in the same way that like with the emotions wheel where you've got happy and angry and sad. Well,
Wheel of feels.
yes, the wheel of feels, and
Yeah,
you've got different types of happy, right? You've got
that's
the
right.
surprised versus being content. Those are different kind of feelings. But in the same way though, overwhelm is like a big feeling, but there are more specific types of overwhelm. Are you intimidated? Are you overcommitted? Are you burnt out? And so the way that the book is sort of set up and how I have found it most helpful to navigate those emotions is I've got those kind of 5 main sections, which are like stuck, unmotivated, or stuck, overwhelmed, unmotivated, disorganized, and discouraged. And
Mhm.
then once you can identify, all right, what am I trying to get done? What is which of these 5 feels like it's making, getting
Yeah.
in the way? And then flipping to that section and going, okay, now there are different how are you feeling sub emotions into reading these I statements. And if I can read the statements that say, oh, I have so much to do, this is going to take forever, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
and go, oh, that sounds like me. That's the section I need to be in. And then they can, go to that section to find those tailored tools. And I really, this emotional framework was not like part of the plan. It actually became this thing that grew out of me needing to figure out how are people going to not get a book of 100, over 100 ways to get stuff done and go, I'm overwhelmed looking at this,
Right.
So I stumbled into it on accident. It's one of the things I think I'm most proud of because it really maps executive dysfunction in a way that I feel like people really hadn't before, since it's lived experience based and less like medically, based.
Your hormones are raging, your brain is betraying, the world may be ending. Now what? Unfortunately, most of us don't have the luxury of opting out of our daily responsibilities. Yet, when you're an ADHD or experiencing midlife or just being alive in these crazy times, that can be tricky. This is where Rebel Reset comes in, rooted in first-hand experience, neuroscience, and user data from women like you. This is a 30-day program to get you unstuck. Because as much as you wish you were a robot, because you'd have better career prospects, you aren't a robot, and being a woman is complicated right now. To get started, visit Rebel Mama Pod on Instagram and DM me the word reset.
Yeah, I'm really glad you're talking about this. And it's like after we're done, I'm going to go pull this book back out and look at it with fresh eyes, because the emotional component I'm learning is so huge. And it's while you were talking, it kind of reminds me of Atlas of the Heart. Like, you're giving us a map to our emotional resistance, and that's such a gift. That's cool.
It's difficult to find your way if you don't know where you are.
Yeah. I didn't know there were so many brands of overwhelm. I thought it was just overwhelm.
Yes, there's different, there's like intimidated. I am in the intimidated section
Okay.
all the time. And then in the stuck section, I live in perfectionistic. Like,
Yep.
people think of perfectionism, like particularly, I talk to a lot of like women with ADHD, and like it has become the like coping skill, that like, if I make this perfect, if no one can criticize me, then I could be proud of myself and I could be done. I could be done when this is beyond, reproach, because so many of us are so afraid of criticism.
Yeah, that tracks, dude. That's incredible to hear it externalized like that. So what are you up to these days? You have the book. Where can we find your book? Where can we keep up with what you're creating right now?
So the book is at antiplanner.com, and I've got, right now, we got in a shipment of clean editions that were supposed to be original editions. So we're figuring out how to navigate that. And I'm currently kind of working actually on, right now, before we hopped on here, stuff for new activities for potentially doing I have not spoken a word of this out loud before, so now it is real. I've been working on anti-planner 2 activities, and so potentially having the beta tests for those come out, because that's actually what I did with the book, that a lot of people, they go, oh, this is so easy to use, or I enjoy it a lot. Stuff that I was curious about if it would resonate or if it would work for people or not. I did do like beta testing, and so I had different ones that you could go download, and I do have like digital download PDFs for people who are wondering, but I had it to where you could try them out and then give me feedback on if it worked for you, if it didn't. And honestly, I had it say, even if you don't use any of these, I would still love to hear from you on why you didn't use them. Was it because they were intimidating? Was it because nothing that you needed to get done matched these activities? Was it because they, it just didn't sound good? And to let people know already, again, that like, how do we design around people who are used to feeling ashamed? Yeah. I know if I downloaded something from a small creator who said they wanted to beta test and I didn't do anything and I didn't give her feedback, I might feel bad. And giving people that permission, that's like, it's still really useful information to hear from you, even if you didn't use any of the stuff. And so being able to kind of, I think, take that approach towards product design, of understanding that shame-based component of like, how are people expecting themselves to fail?
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation, Dani. Is there anything else you want to add or throw in before we sign off?
I get asked a lot, like, what one of my favorite, ways to get stuff done when you don't feel like it like is from the book. And I've got a ton of stuff in the book that I developed myself, little games and weird, like there's a lot of weird ways, like just weird enough to work kind of things.
Yeah.
But from like I do like to leave people with like a practical thing that I do that they could do like right now that costs like pennies, as far as if you struggle to remember what you're working on, you know, what you need to do or what the status is. And a lot of people, without getting overwhelmed, a lot of people have heard of like Kanban boards, right? Where you've got in progress or to do, in progress, on hold, and done.
Right.
And I used to do it on, you know, on the walls or on digitally. And what I always end up coming back to is along my computer monitor, I will put to-dos on Post-it notes, and they go at the bottom. The to-dos are at the bottom. And then once I go to do it like in progress, I move it over to the right side of the monitor. If I'm waiting to hear back from somebody about something, I put it on the left. And then when I'm done, I can flip it up on the top. So the top, everything's flipped upside down and is the done. And it does a few different things in that it forces me to limit the number of things on my to-do list because there's only so much room down there. I can't have like an endless, you know, digital to-do list that just gets so overwhelming. And then it also has this beautiful side effect of not being ignorable, because if I've got a Kanban board and it's off to the side, you know, it could be there, but it just blends into the background. Having them in front of your face makes it really difficult to forget about them. So that's, I do love to kind of give people one little strategy that they can implement right away. And if you've got Post-it notes and a computer monitor, that's my fave.
Awesome. I'll throw one in too. I love the one where you throw the dice and you assign each number to a task. It's so fun. Yeah.
Or having like a set of ranges. And what I've found is, so, you know, if it's like 1 through 5, I'm going to check my emails. 6 through 10, I'm going to do dishes. 11 through 19, I'm going to work on new anti-planner activities. And 20 is like, I am, you know, get to play video games, and then you get to roll a D20. And for some people, they're like, I don't play D&D. I'm excited to have a reason to get a cool D20.
Yep.
So for a lot of people, they wanted to get that. But the thing there is that, like, okay, well, working on the anti-planner 2 activities is most important. So I made that range the widest. So it's a higher likelihood that I will get that activity. But the 20 being a non-productive activity, people love, because it's like the universe gave you permission to procrastinate more. And if you choose to do something anyway, you feel like such a rock star because you technically didn't have to, you know, and so you get this extra boost of, I was already planning on doing something, but now I'm doing that thing and knowing that I did it because I wanted to. And other times, you know, you get a 20 and it's super exciting, and you just needed the break and you needed someone to give you permission to take a break. And so I think that's another one of my favorites too.
Wow. Yeah. I got to get back into that book because, man, these are some golden nuggets you're dropping in.
If people are interested in my ADHD comics, you can go to ADHDDD.com. I've got my comics there, as well as embedded videos of my TikToks. There's a lot of people who are like, oh, I want to watch them, but I don't have TikTok. I'm like, you don't have to have TikTok to watch them on my website. So if people are interested in my ADHD content, that's where you can check those out.
Well, Dani, thanks again, and I will talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. Bye.